Chiefs Kingdom, we have breaking news to get to you here on the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports as Charles Omenihu has officially torn his ACL and will not play in Super Bowl 58, which is just a huge, huge blow for this defense and a heartbreaker for a guy who has played really great his last 8-7 games and has come on with the Chiefs from the Niners. Was going to be a revenge game against his former team in the Super Bowl and now has officially torn his ACL. We appreciate you being here as always. I know this is a tough kind of video to make, but hey, we're still here getting the news out. And ultimately, when breaking news happens, we have you covered right here on the Chiefs Report. So do me a favor, go down there and subscribe if you are not subscribed already. And if you want to make sure you're on top of it and want to know all the breaking news, when's it happen, as we have Super Bowl coming up, well, then guess what? You can turn on those notifications. That way you get notified whenever we post a video. We're super happy you're here as always, although it's tough news. Let's get into the tweet from Jordan Schultz, who broke this news earlier, just literally a couple minutes ago, saying, Chiefs pass rusher Charles Omenihu suffered a torn ACL versus the Ravens, and he has been a huge part of this KC defense as he goes on. 7 sacks. He missed the first 6 games due to suspension, but since then has been really, really good and included a big strip sack against Lamar in yesterday's game that resulted in the turnover for Baltimore. And honestly, it was a big part in the game. And after the game, he was asked about, well, what's your availability to the Super Bowl? And the confidence was there. He said, do I look like someone who's not going to be playing the Super Bowl? No, I don't. We're good. It's just a huge blow to the defense, and I think it's surprising because he didn't act like this was going to be anything big. And with the torn ACL, it kind of all makes sense because you have the initial tear, but after that, you kind of feel all right. You can, for the most part, function walking, all that. Obviously, cutting is going to be a little hard, using your agility. But him going on the sideline, throwing his helmet down, I have to assume he felt something, came off, was checked out by the training staff, and was told, hey, you're not going back in, and that's when he got pissed. Now, obviously, I don't know the full details, but I do know that now he's out, and he's heartbroken, which you could expect from a guy who really, really enjoyed being a part of the Chiefs, and now, unfortunately, his season ends in the AFC Championship game, which he played a pivotal part in. Obviously, that strip sack was a huge, huge role, but it wasn't just the playoffs that he was a big role in. Down the stretch, he was amazing, and throughout his 11 games as a Chief this season, he had 28 tackles, 7 sacks. 7 sacks is a lot considering when you look at the Chiefs' total sack leaders, you have 2 guys at 10.5 sacks, but they played 4 or 5 more games than Mr. Omenihu. 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups. Charles played really, really exceptional, and ultimately now the unfortunate part is we can't have him in the Super Bowl, and all we can do is show support. I mean, that's ultimately at this point. We just have to show our support to Charles Omenihu for a speedy recovery and hope that he can come back stronger and better next year, whenever that may be. Obviously, with a torn ACL, he'll probably miss some time into next year. We don't exactly know how long this injury could last, but right now, just show your support in every way possible to kind of let Charles Omenihu know that, hey, he's still a part of Kansas City Chiefs. He's still a part of the Chiefs Kingdom. He is here, and I hope he's going to be at the Super Bowl, and I know he will be rooting on his teammates. I just feel so bad for the guy, so let's show our support in any way possible for Charles, but man, that's a tough break for the guy. Now, on the Chiefs side, we do have to start looking at this as, okay, what's next? How do we go about this? Well, let's first look at the defensive line depth chart here. As I mentioned, the depth on this defensive line has been really, really good this year. Mike Dana has played great. Chris Jones has been an all-pro again, as usual. Derek Nottie, who has been injured the last 2 games, played a really pivotal role in the absence of Omenihu early in the season. And then Karlaftis has also played really, really great. Honestly, the depth on this line may be one of the best depth pieces the Chiefs have. Obviously, you can go to cornerbacks. They've got a lot of good depth there. The linebacking core, pretty good depth-wise. But I think overall, the defensive line depth for the way they've had to go about this season has been really, really great. You had Chris Jones miss the first game. You had Omenihu out for 6 games. If we think about it right here, the first game of the season, there was no Chris Jones, there was no Charles Omenihu, and the Chiefs still played pretty well against the Lions. Now, the edge rushers, this is where it comes in, because Dana, Karlaftis, Omenihu, those are the 3 we've seen this season. Obviously, Karlaftis being the best, 10.5 sacks, but the tackles for a loss across the board, really good. The tackles, really good. And Omenihu, obviously, again, playing less games, that's why his stats are a little lower. But now we're going to ask a lot more of that depth, because now when Dana needs a break, when Karlaftis needs a break, who are you going to go to? Tershawn Wharton's one option, but might I open up another one? The rookie Felix Uzoma, the first-round draft pick of the Chiefs in 2023, who has not really seen the field. He's been a guy who we haven't talked about a lot, who we haven't gotten to see in this really Chiefs uniform that much. Honestly, he needs to step up, and I could easily see him play a pivotal role because, well, he's going to have time. This past 2 weeks, he's been a healthy scratch. I don't see him being a healthy scratch at the Super Bowl anymore. I don't see him doing that. And honestly, it's really hard to look at this and see, hey, okay, how exactly do we trust Enyiduke Uzoma? Maybe there's a lot of trust there that we don't know about that they've been just saving because he wasn't needed this year. FAU's been great, but ultimately they just haven't needed him. They thought they were going to need him more. Omenihu's come in, he's played great. Dana, Nadi, Karlaftis, all great guys. But how much faith do you have in FAU, the rookie, guy out of Kansas State, hometown kid? What do you think about that? Scale it from 1 to 10. Let me know your confidence level in the rookie. 1 being least confident, 10 being most confident. He could play a pivotal role in the Super Bowl, and I got to be honest, it would be very Kansas City Chiefs to have Felix Uzoma, who didn't play all year pretty much, get the game-winning sack. Just saying. I'll give you my number here in just a second, but I do want to tell you about an amazing, amazing place to go make some money on the Super Bowl, and that is Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game, and you can play any type of sport. They have football, obviously, but they got basketball, they got NHL, MLB is coming up, and it's super easy to play. You pick 2 or more players, then you can go on more or less on their Prize Picks projected stats, then choose flex or power play, depending on your confidence. 2 to 6 players are around what you go. I like 3 players in my entries. Here's what I've got going for Super Bowl 58. Patrick Mahomes, he's got a special deal on Prize Picks right now, more than a half a passing yard. Yeah, I think he's going to do that. And then I'm going to add 2 onto that and make more on Isaiah Pacheco on the rushing and receiving touchdowns. He has a touchdown in every single playoff game this season. I expect him to continue that. And then Christian McCaffrey, more than 35.5 receiving yards. He is definitely going to get that just because the Chiefs' one big weakness has been receiving backs on defense. I said the run defense, but that kind of really closed up this week against the Baltimore Ravens. But they still let Gus Edwards receive a couple passes. They still had a couple of Justice Hill catches that could have easily gone for a lot more yardage. I think all 3 of those are really, really good hits. So go ahead and put them down yourself because you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. Or it makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use the code CLNS for your first deposit match of up to $100. Shout out to Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. For my confidence in FAU, I'm going to go a 5. And the reason it's a 5 is because we haven't seen him a lot, but when he's been on the field, I would argue he's played pretty well. I know that the stats aren't exactly the greatest, just a couple of tackles, a couple of passes, 1 flash deflection. He's played overall average in stat sheets, but how I judge a player is similar to the way that I look at Willie Gay. He's always around the ball. That was similar to the way I saw in FAU. And he played well in Week 18 versus the Chargers. If you remember that game, there was a lot of people sitting out. There was a lot of people that weren't going to play that game due to just kind of making sure everybody was healthy going to the playoffs. You were locked to 3 seed, no reason to play anybody. So FAU played. He played pretty well. Had 3 tackles, which isn't too much, but he was overall around the ball a lot when he was on the field. And I think that's the sign of a player that knows football and will get to the point where he can be a really good defender in this league. I think the problem is he hasn't had a lot of time to show that off. He hasn't had a lot of time to grow his game. I think when the Chiefs made this draft pick, in some ways it was a bit of an emotional move, having the hometown kid, Kansas State, down the road from Manhattan, just getting him. But at the same time, I also think they may have thought they might need him more this year. They thought they didn't really trust in Nani. They didn't trust in Dana. Guess what? Those guys have been great this year, and so FAU has kind of just been like, well, just kind of wait in the wings. We'll have you next year when we potentially don't have Chris Jones, when Mike Dana could be gone, Derek Nadi. We don't exactly know their plan and Brett Veach's plan. So we have to kind of look at that. And now Charles Omenihu, though, is gone. So now it's FAU. Okay, can we have you in the playoffs? And Omenihu in the playoffs is where I think he may have shined a little bit more than people really expected. He just had 3 tackles, but 1 sack and 1 forced fumble. And like I mentioned, that forced fumble may have been the biggest play of the game yesterday. I know it's kind of weird to think about it, but it was so early. But I go back to my keys to the game. Force turnovers early on Lamar Jackson and get the score up early. Make sure you score. That's exactly what that turnover did. That's exactly what Omenihu did by forcing the turnover, slapping the ball out of Mr. Lamar Jackson's hand, taking it away, and getting the Chiefs in scoring position. He was a big key in that game, and now you don't have him. You have to kind of rely on other people. But that begs the question, what other people? Could it just be within? Or could our good friend Chris Jones finally get what he's been asking for? And this cryptic tweet, right? It's blood in the water. Well, it's cryptic, except it followed with a photo. That photo? Frank Clark. And this was tweeted right after the Bengals game. What if the Chiefs go sign Frank Clark? That's not out of the realm of possibility right now. Why not? He's an edge rusher. He would fit in pretty well. Ultimately, he knows the Chiefs' defense. You'd make Chris Jones happy. Could they sign him? He was a playoff masterclass in his time with the Chiefs. 12 games, 32 tackles, 10.5 sacks. For reference, 17 games this year for the Chiefs. Karlaftis and Jones, the leading sackers, 10.5. 12 games, 10.5 sacks for Frank Clark. 93 sack yard loss, 1 fumble recovery. Frank Clark was a beast in the playoffs, and now you have the opportunity to sign him. Do you? I want you to be the GM on this statement. Would you want the Chiefs to sign Frank Clark coming up here to replace Charles Omenihu? Kind of fits that role, similar in a lot of ways. Type S for sign if you're signing Frank Clark. Type P for pass. Let me know in the comment section down below. Why not sign him? I mean, why not? I don't really see the problem in this at this point. You have a couple guys on your practice squad you can bring up, but you have a guy who's been proven this year. You have a guy who has been proven with the Chiefs. You have a guy who knows what it's like to play in the playoffs. A guy that was with the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year. Experience. Why not sign him back? Why not take him? We'll talk more about this throughout the week, but I think it's an interesting observation, and obviously if it happens, guess what? We'll cover it. So make sure you're subscribed. We got the breaking news for you at all times of the day, all times of the year. And now with Super Bowl coming up, we have Super Bowl coverage for you for the next 2 weeks. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're getting videos out to you as much as humanly possible. But, man, prayers out to Charles Omenihu. Sucks for the kid, but that's all we got, Tree. Peace out, Chiefs Kingdom.